I think we should try to let go of trying to fit in to what people might think is correct. You don't have to be for everybody. You build your strategy and you see your dot on the horizon where you want to go in 5 years, 10 years, and you just build upon what you're doing to get there. Then your cash flow, then the right people will connect to your journey as well.
I am so excited to be here. This has been on the vision board for such a long time. But you are the first interview of the Reclaiming Bossy International edition. Can you please start by introducing yourself as if you're speaking to someone that you've never met before?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And my name is Anna. I'm a Dutch Moluccan. Do you say third culture now?
You can say that, yeah.
Yeah. And we're in the Netherlands right now. That's where me and my partner Milad founded Good Jamu, and I think that came to be because you're kind of figuring out both worlds. I'm Dutch, but I'm also Moluccan, and Good Jamu embodied that as the business that we now practice, I think, for 4 years. Yeah.
That's awesome. And before we connected, I had no idea what Jamu was. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure that I'm not the only one, especially because a lot of our audience is based in the UK. So could you please give us a little summary of what Jamu is?
Sure. Jamu is the Indonesian version of self-care, and it's a practice that's over 1300 years old. And it's the first version of female entrepreneurship in Indonesia, and it's really beautiful because it was carried by women. The recipes are herbal based, and then it's made with fresh roots or fresh spices and herbs that are coming from different places or different islands in Indonesia, basically to make your body the best version of itself. So you take it on a daily basis proactively instead of when you're not feeling well, you act on it. And I think in Indonesia, it's a broad category. Maybe you can relate to it as in Ayurveda, you have a lot of knowledge that comes from literally what the earth gives you, or in Chinese traditional medicine, you have it as well. And Jamu is that version, but then for Indonesia.
That's beautiful. And what does the word Jamu itself mean? Because in my research, it came up as a prayer for health. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it can be a prayer for health or plant medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very literal and it's very beautiful because traditionally it's been made for the royal family in Indonesia. Mm-hmm. But then these women in the court were like, that knowledge is actually something we should share with our community. And that was really beautiful because they took that knowledge and at that point took their woven baskets with glass bottles with concoctions and walked them from village to village to actually take care of themselves and their communities.
That's awesome. What I love from what we spoke about off camera was that you said that Good Jamu is not just a drink, but it's like tied to your day. It's like a way that you do self-care, and it's almost this like wellness thing of part of your morning and evening rituals and everything. And when you mentioned Ayurveda, I was thinking about chai and tea in my culture and how it's not just a drink, it's less wellness. In India, it's more about community.
Yep.
Of like you always sit down and you have your chai with your family, or like when people come over, it's the first thing you offer them. And so it's like almost as glue in social interaction. So how does that work in the context of Jamu? Like how is Jamu glue in terms of Indonesian culture, society, community? What is that like?
Maybe picking up from these women going from village to village. As you said, it's part of your daily ritual. It's part of your routine. So in the past, you would hear rebels on the glass and these women would take place on a square and you would walk out and people would gather and you would talk to the Jamu Gendong, what her name is, the Jamu master basically, and maybe you explain what you wanted to achieve with your body and she would make your ritual for a few days, or she would just hand you one drink that you should take for that day. Then you would have your small chat, connect with your neighbors, maybe your family members are there, and then you go on again with your daily life. So I think in that way it's kind of similar, but it's very focused on what it can do for your body. And maybe now we call it wellness, or on this side of the world we call it wellness, but there it's very normal because your community, your family is wellness, your massage is wellness, eating is wellness, and it's not a monetized thing where not everybody can partake in it. And that might be the distinct difference with what it is this side of the world.
I love that. What inspired you to take this beautiful part of your culture and turn it into a business here in the Netherlands?
I think it came very naturally. At one point, it was COVID and everybody became a little bit more aware of what they wanted to consume or how they wanted to take care of their bodies. And this is just something we always made at home, but in Indonesia, you have it fresh and you can buy it at more places where it's more available, and here it wasn't. So it just started out as me and Milad making it for our friends and family at that point, and then it kind of got out of hand because more people started noticing or they got word from somebody else. And in the beginning we were in the city where we come from, Deventer. We were just biking around at summertime because there was not much to do and the world was at a standstill, and we're just delivering our small portion of good vibes from door to door. And then we got notifications that people wanted to buy it on different sides of the countries, and we were just trying to figure out how we could fulfill that demand. So that's how it started. And then we started thinking about, okay, now it needs to have a look and now it needs to be more streamlined, and how can we scale this? But for me, it's also a really beautiful way of representing a part of my own culture and hopefully doing that in the right way, and make sure that we don't do any concessions in what Jamu originally is.
That is so cool. And my question to you is, I think a lot of people during the pandemic started all these amazing projects linked to their passions, their purposes, their interests. But many people find that jump between passion project or side hustle and turning it into a full-time business really intimidating. So what would you give as advice for first steps? And what was your first steps with building Good Jamu into the brand it is today?
I think first step is just doing it and then allowing yourself time to figure out as you go along, but also doing your research really well and be persistent. One thing that was really important for me, even though that this is part of who I am and part of the way I've always lived as a young person up until now, is doing research about what Jamu is, talking to people that know more about it than I do. And I think at one point we went back to Indonesia to actually be taught by Jamu masters how to use different ingredients and to what end. And from there on you learn and you build up on. Don't be afraid to have setbacks, and there's always closed doors. One red thread that always has been into the story of Good Jamu is that we did things an unconventional way, apparently, because I don't come from a food or beverage background. I'm from a marketing background. So that's what I did. I did storytelling. We did socials. That was what our strength was. And the way that we got to places and, for example, on the first retail shelves was because we talked our way into it. We went door to door, and apparently you're not supposed to do that, but that was for us a logical route. And then hopefully you get to that level where you become a more solid player, and you see that even there, your maybe underdog position is your biggest leverage, because you're not stuck in boxes and you're not stuck in conventional ways or traditional ways. Mm-hmm. And that could open really beautiful opportunities for you as well.
I love that. And I really resonate with that as well. Starting my business as a student, I didn't necessarily have any of the official skills that maybe would be on the job description of being a CEO or founder. But storytelling is so important, and the way that you just kind of try is really, really important. In terms of what you were saying about resilience and people saying no, I find the hardest part of running a business is the mental battle of, am I doing enough? Is this going to work? Especially at the start when you don't necessarily have the evidence or the cash flow or the social media following to prove. And so do you have any advice on how to cultivate a mindset of resilience, of just getting up and doing the thing every day? Because it can be hard on some days.
It can definitely be hard, and it's not always as energetic as you want it to be. And there's also sometimes where you feel like, oh, I only did 3 things today and I wanted to do this whole list of things that I wanted to work through, and you can almost feel guilty because you didn't tick every box. But you need to be kind to yourself, and literally Rome wasn't built in a day. So why do we keep ourselves to a standard that is sometimes maybe unhealthy? Success literally is because you're consistent and you believe in what you want to do, and step step by step, maybe even like how you said it, if there's 1% I can do better, then that's what I'm going to do better for the next time I'm going through this process again. And ask people around you how they did it. Or find maybe people in the same space that you're operating in and reach out to them, even though you don't know them. But this is something that became very helpful for us as well, because in the beginning, you also feel like you need to do everything alone. But people are really willing to help you out or just even connect you to somebody else. And maybe then you'll be one step further, and then you need to have patience.
Yeah, patience is a big one. I think like sometimes, because I don't know how it is for you, but in my case, I find that no day looks the same. And so I have these crazy seasons of like this opportunity and this and this. And then sometimes you just have to wait for things to just happen. And that part is like really stressful and scary. But looking back, it makes sense. In terms of founder communities, one thing I want to ask you is, because this is the first ever international episode, is there any communities or spaces in Amsterdam that you would recommend for anyone who's interested in business or entrepreneurship that they can go when they're feeling like lost or scared, or they're like feeling impatient, especially for the solo founders, because doing it alone is like quite hard? So do you have any recommendations of like where to get support?
I think there are a few communities in the Netherlands, and the one that helped us specifically is based around food entrepreneurship. So you can become literally part of their community, where people go through the same stages that you do as well. And then you can ask questions, and everybody is very open. And it's maybe about scaling or another producer, or I don't know, even an ingredient supplier that you can ask somebody else about, because they've been there and done that. And that might be really helpful, because then you're not alone in going through your day-to-day activities. And also sometimes helps to just drink coffee outside of your normal trajectory and get out and just talk to people.
I love that. And you said when you were studying Good Jamu, like you just went and you talked to people about your mission. What was it like introducing something that is so infused into your heritage into like a newer market where maybe some people didn't really know what it was? How was it explaining something that is like different in a different context, and kind of making it almost a hybrid of your experience like as a Dutch person, but also as a Moluccan person, and also like bringing those two elements in a way that's accessible for people outside of Indonesia?
So when we started in the Netherlands, there was no category for functional drinks. In the UK, you have a vast shelf with all these different products, but here in the Netherlands, we don't. We have the traditional sodas, and then you have not a lot of different options beside that. Maybe kombucha is something that started here 5 years ago approximately, and then even where we're from, that's not even on the menus yet. In Amsterdam, you have a little bit more variety. So we needed to translate what jamu was to people that were supposed to help us sell it. And then we packaged it as it's a functional drink. And the storytelling for us is really important. And the thing I think really works for us is that the flavor already speaks for itself. So we don't need to convince people of the flavor, but then what the product should be placed to on a shelf was a different story. And we did that, I think, 4 years ago. And literally the reply was functional drinks. Where do we place it? Is it then next to what we already have? And they didn't know what to do with us. And now, 4 years later, you see that in the Netherlands, there is also more variety now. And that, for example, retailers are building spaces, shelf spaces around what functional products are. And I think because this is a product that isn't built on a trend, it's literally something that's been done for 100 years, we have a really nice foundation. And for example, people ask us like, oh, don't you think that this might be fleeting? No, because it's been done before us. And for me, it's just a really nice opportunity to make this fit into a modern day structure. But storytelling for us is still the most important element of the product. And for me, it's also that the product is a vehicle, basically, to bring together a community, because everybody needs to have some time for themselves, just some downtime. And I think if you look at what jamu in the category sense can do for you. This fits in really nicely. Also proud at the sense that this is something I think on the shelves in the Netherlands that's unique, because there's the traditional Asian products, but not many Indonesian drinks. Here, especially in the Netherlands, people know Indonesian food because of the history that the Netherlands has with Indonesia, but drinks never really got a highlight. So for me, also a really beautiful opportunity to push that forward.
Yeah, it looks beautiful on the shelf as well. Like yesterday, I was when I arrived, I went to the grocery store and I saw it by accident. Like I wasn't looking for it. Like I thought I'm gonna go get it tomorrow, but I saw it and I sent you a picture, and it stood out on the shelf so much because there was all these like more traditional products and then kind of like matcha and all this stuff. And then I was like, this looks beautiful, and also there's nothing like this next to it. I think that's really unique, but often there is, like you were saying about the storytelling, a time lag between like people thinking it's cool and people not really understanding what it is. And so do you have any advice for people that are navigating a similar kind of thing where they're trying to build something where maybe it doesn't already exist in the mainstream in the same way? How can you articulate yourself and what you're trying to build with more clarity and just try and convince people of your ideas?
I think in that sense we had to strip down our storytelling because we needed to make very clear in one look what this could be and why you want to pick it up from a shelf. So we simplified it a lot. And then on the background, we do a lot of storytelling. We try to give as much knowledge about Jamu, for example, on our socials. We do a lot of workshops and events where we tell people that are interested in different flavors what we do. But we also go to different bars where people or bartenders create new drinks, and they are always open for new flavors. And so you create like small groups of ambassadors, and then it's starting to live. And word of mouth is, even though it's not measurable, but it's so important for what you do. If other people are telling your story or cheering for you, that's doing more than me sitting here basically explaining what Jamu is. Then people can still think like, oh, it's a product and you want to sell it. So I think that's also really helpful. If you have people next to you that believe in your story just as much as you do, and they like vouch for you, or like they tell the story with just as much passion.
Yeah. I think in order to be that, you have to have so much conviction in your own story. And for some people, that comes easier than others. I think you can really care about something, but then the gap between you caring about something and thinking other people will care about it, or it's like good enough, or you can do it, is a bit overwhelming sometimes. I found it really overwhelming when I was starting a business. I was like, I don't really know if I am the person to do this or solve this problem, or if I can. And so from a confidence side and the story that you tell yourself, not just the story that you tell your community or your customers or your investors, do you have any advice on like the confidence side of that?
I think we should try to let go of trying to fit in to what people might think is correct, or you should be unapologetically yourself. And that might be scary and not everybody might like it, but I think you don't have to be for everybody. So if you find your own purpose and you really truly believe in it, that's the best thing you can do for yourself. Then it's just pushing through and really believing in yourself. And it can be such a small thing, or your ideas don't have to be like $1 million ideas. You don't need to live in a space where everything needs to be hugely monetized. And I think that's something that we're sometimes forgetting, that you can do something really impactful and really meaningful, but if you do it for the right reasons and you play it out correctly, you build your strategy and you see your dot on the horizon where you want to go in, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, and you just build upon what you're doing to get there, then your cash flow, then the right people will connect to your journey as well.
That is so powerful and such good advice. It's something that I, again, like I said, really struggle with when I started, because I thought that an entrepreneur or a business person has to look a certain way, has to behave a certain way. I started my business 21 years old, still a student, and I thought I have to sound like a CEO, talk like a CEO, and then it just really just wasn't working for me. And so the moments where I would accidentally let the mask slip was the moments where I'd actually get way more success, and I realized the power of authenticity. But it can be a little bit like intimidating at the start, because with visibility, like you think entrepreneurship and being a founder is like doing all of this stuff. And for me, like I said, I thought businesses were like super techy or super AI right now and you have to be like a very specific kind of person. But I'm learning that there's so many different types of businesses and you can design it to fit the kind of person that you are. And so you're one of the few people that I've interviewed so far that have a products business. How have you designed your business to fit around the person that you are in your life and everything? Because I think with services, it's a bit easier in terms of you can pick your clients, you can pick your hours, you can pick whatever. But how do you create that flexibility and design intentionally with a products business?
So for me, it was just about really honoring what Jamu is. I didn't want to take anything away from what that is. So throughout the whole process of getting different products in the product lineup that we have or different flavors, the people that we work with are so important. So it took a lot of time to find partners that could help us the way that fits Good Jamu, because, for example, with a soda, we have a lot of ingredients in there. So we have 8 herbs, and then there is the main flavors. So, for example, the roots, or the one you're drinking is hibiscus flower and lemon balm. But it's not normal for sodas to have that many ingredients, or people work with coloring, flavoring, and we didn't want to do that. So then you have all these conversations and people saying like, oh, but you can just do this simpler and you can take away all these ingredients and you can add more sugar, for example. And they're like, thank you for your input, but we would like to have these things still, and we want to try it differently. And then it's, oh, that's not possible. Okay, so you start a conversation with somebody new. And I think that was what took the most time and still is taking the most time, because I want to be true to what, for me, this concept is. And I don't want to do any concessions in it, even though scaling is an option. So for me, it's like slow and steady growth. And again, there, it's also patience, but you want to go faster somehow. Sometimes in your head, it's like, oh, it should have been there already. But going through all the steps very consciously and really learning what a product is and understanding how it's made also gives us the leverage to talk to different parties that we're working with and make them understand why it's important for us. And even though they give us other options or maybe how this can be finalized into an end product, we have nuances that are really important for us. And that's it. If we cannot do that together, that's fine. And we just look for somebody else. And I think that will be a continuous journey, but I think it's still something that makes the foundation of this product still what it is.
That is so interesting. And I was going to ask you, in terms of what you were sharing, there's so many different ways of creating jamu for so many different things. What made you decide on the initial flavors that you have, and like, how did you pick the formulas? Because like you said, there's this almost alchemy side of it where you're like bringing on lots of different things for each individual person, but when you're creating it as a business product, it's going to reach a lot of different people. And so how did you distill that into kind of batchable products and scalable products?
So back to the beginning, when we were actually learning more about what jamu is and how you make it, or the different ways that you can make the drinks, we did that in Indonesia. And we literally asked the jamu masters at that point that we were taught by if they were okay with us taking this back to the Netherlands and trying to do this on a larger scale. And I think it was really nice that they said yes, first of all, because otherwise I wouldn't have started this business, even though it's something I grew up with. But also that they said it was really nice that a younger generation was interested in doing this, because in Indonesia it's something that's slowly disappearing, because people my age can earn money in a different way. They can sit behind a computer, have a desk job and earn money and don't have to wake up 5 a.m. peeling ingredients, cooking everything, and then drive to a market and maybe, I don't know, go home with a few 100,000 rupiahs to feed their families. So they were also very happy that this was something that was brought to a broader audience. And I think it really fits in nicely with that jamu became a untouchable heritage listed by UNESCO in 2023. So in that way, we kind of contribute to keeping a tradition alive, but in a modern way.
And in terms of flavors, like, how did you decide your initial flavors of like all the different options you could choose for? What made
There's so many flavors, so many different varieties. So what we try to do is start with the turmeric version, because I think it's the most accessible one, but also the version where we here could make it consistently the same quality every time, because not all ingredients are as widely available here as they are in Indonesia. So that's how we started, and we built it up from 2 flavors first. We have glass bottles, which is the original jamu, how you would drink it in Indonesia. And then we made the soda versions as an entry level for people that are not familiar with these flavors at all, because Dutch kitchen doesn't cook with turmeric. So that could already be a very different experience if you have never tasted something like this. But because we made it light and with bubbles, it was something that, at least from consumers here that don't have any like familiarity with the flavors, still a response of like, oh, that's refreshing. I didn't know it could taste like this. Because they only know it as this powder that turns their kitchen yellow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. Being in London, I see ginger shots, turmeric shots, matcha, mate, like every time I go to the grocery store, but I've never heard of jamu, and so it's so wonderful like seeing how different cultures have their own practices and how that's becoming more and more normalized. And with this kind of stuff, there's a lot of controversy around like cultural appreciation versus cultural appropriation, but I think it's awesome that you went to the jamu masters and you kind of asked them how you can integrate all the practices throughout. In terms of international expansion, I read that you are now in the UK as well, actually, in a couple of places online, and you have your website. So how is it sharing this heritage and cultural message in different markets internationally as well?
I think that's still very much the same. And I think it's even easier for us to do it outside of the Netherlands. For example, UK or London then specifically has such a vast variety of cultures and people and kitchens. So it's not as strange to try a drink with turmeric. And here people are more cautious maybe when it comes to new flavors. So you really have to have patience here. And I think now in our 4th year, we see that big retailers also see the shift in how people consume. You see that a younger generation is not consuming alcohol as much, and that there is a difference in way of the kind of products that they would like to consume. They're way more conscious about healthy products or the ingredients that might be in the products that are presented on the shelf. And that for us was good positioning at the start, because now we can go and grow into that wave. And you see that, for example, the largest retailer here, largest supermarket, now stocks our original jamu bottles as a non-alcoholic mixer, basically in a non-alcoholic shelf. So there it has a different angle, but it's still the same storytelling, still same product. And I think in the UK it's the same, in Germany it's the same. It's even a little bit more easy because people already consume differently.
I love that. And I think another way that you've really been able to spread the word is through, you said you came from a marketing background. The socials are wonderful, and I'm going to link everything down below so people can follow. But how have you used your experience in marketing to create such interesting, beautiful, engaging content for your audiences? And do you have any advice on marketing for anyone who's starting their own thing that wants to know how to not just talk about what they're building, but kind of have that as a thread through their content, through their branding, through the way that they show up online as well?
I think it's being really authentic, have your own voice, and that shows throughout everything you do, especially on socials. But also really think about what people might want to learn from you, or in your head it might sound like common knowledge, but sometimes people tell me like, oh, I didn't even know this was the first form of female entrepreneurship of Indonesia. Why don't you talk about that? I'm like, okay, yeah, I will. So it's also talking to people about what you do and about the passion that you have, give them insights and where you're going. And then from these conversations, you pick up on signs where you're like, oh, that could be something interesting that I can share with my audience because it's an added value for them as well. And I think in that sense, your product comes secondary, but you're building a community. So the content that you create is to build information sources or entertainment sources for the community that you want to create and grow.
That's awesome. So what's next for you and for Good Jamu? Because you've built this amazing product, you're expanding and scaling, but you're also trying to see how you can thread more culture, heritage, history, story through it. What's next? What can the people expect from Good Jamu and from you?
I think in that sense, we want to evolve the perception of jamu. It's not dusty. It's something that's still very relevant, and self-care is still very relevant. So I think where we want to go is that at one point, people walk into a store and they see jamu, and then it's, oh, it's jamu. It becomes as normalized as you're mentioning a matcha or a mate. And I think that's what we're building towards.
That is awesome. And I feel like you've shared so much insight around not just Jamu, but business and building and just getting going and storytelling. What's one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self, or you starting 4 years ago, or the audience, of how you could have done things differently to make things more enjoyable, easier, and more efficient?
More efficient is just make that choice. Don't think about it for months. Just make a decision. There is no good or bad. You will see how it plays out, and then you can figure out if you need to adapt or you need to build upon that outcome. Don't be afraid to just go and really just be convinced of your own power. That makes it way easier. If you're not in your head just thinking about it, but talking to people, they give their insights, it becomes real because you're bringing it into the ether. And I think that's also really helpful.
I love that. I'm going to link everything down below in the description, but where can people find you and Good Jamu?
So internationally, it's on our website mainly. That's the easiest. But in the Netherlands, we're in supermarkets now, the organic supermarkets, one of the biggest retail supermarkets as well, with our big bottles. And you can find us in a lot of coffee stores where they make all different varieties of the drink. You can drink it as a ginger tea, or they serve it as a cocktail or mocktail, or even as a matcha latte.
Wow,
Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. My last question is, this is Reclaiming Bossy.
Yeah.
I started this because people have always called me bossy, and it was used as a way of like kind of putting me down for knowing what I want, asking for what I want, and just doing it, and like being assertive and whatever. That's what it means for me. And for the last 2.5 years, I've interviewed amazing bossy women from so many different walks of life, doing so many different things. But like I said, you are the first of the international season. So what does bossy mean to you, and are you reclaiming it?
By believing unapologetically in who you are, despite your cultural background, and don't see that as something that might be a disadvantage, but that can be literally be your superpower.
That is so strong. Thank you so much. It's been amazing to have you today, and I can't wait for Jamu to reach the shelves of everywhere in the world and for people to try it. Everyone go check it out. I'm going to link it down below. Thank you so much for everything today. You truly are empowering, inspiring, and incredible.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, that's a wrap.